Well, today I'm going to talk about 3 of the biggest mistakes with cars in the year 2020. And on the top of the list is GM's disaster with Nikola. You know, GM was going to make electric vehicles with Nikola. They couldn't use the name Tesla because that's already taken. So they took his first name, Nikola Tesla, and just called it Nikola. And if you remember, there was a big scam with the fraud of the CEO. He had to quit, and the stock went almost to nothing. Well, GM was tied in with that, and of course, they had to break their ties. I'm sure they lost quite a bit of money on that deal. You think of all the electric car manufacturers they could have tied up with, why did they pick some newcomer that turns out the guy was like P.T. Barnum? He was just trying to see there's a sucker every minute and he's going to take advantage of him. Take Ford, for example. They have more sense. They partnered with Rivian. Amazon put over $1 billion in Rivian for making their delivery electric trucks. So they took a smart move and they partnered with them. They also have some partnering with Volkswagen for electric vehicles. They used common sense. I guess GM was late to the table, so they thought they'll grab at a new startup. Well, that was obviously a big mistake. The next big mistake was Jeep shoving a V8 Hemi engine into their Jeep Wrangler. Now, just a short time ago, they said, well, it's not really a good idea to put a V8 into a Wrangler. There's no room and la. Well, and of course, now they've gone and done it. And if you think of the horsepower that those big Hemis have, and you're sticking it into a high up in the air Jeep, I can only see bad things happening. People toppling over. Those things aren't made. They're not made for that kind of power. Plus, the vast majority, if you do get a Jeep and you want to go off-road, you don't want a V8 engine. It weighs too much. What you need is low-end, rock crawling, a lot of clearance. Not a big V8 engine that weighs a lot, that has less clearance, that has to pull itself. It doesn't make any sense. But of course, they had to compete with all the hoopla of the Bronco, so I'm supposing that's why they decided to shove this V8 engine into a Jeep that's up in the air. It shouldn't have that much horsepower. It's a dangerous thing to drive for sure, but the minds of Fiat Chrysler often don't kind of jive with logic. They're more emotional about these things, but if you're thinking about buying one of those, don't drive it to its full speed. I'll tell you that right now. And the last big mistake was Cadillac and their electric vehicles. They were trying to force their dealers to sell electric vehicles. Well, they had to put a lot of money into infrastructure for the tools, retraining guys. Well, they said, the dealers grumbled so much that they gave them an opt-up. They'd buy them out so they didn't have to sell electric vehicles. Now, so far, over 20% of the Cadillac dealers themselves said, we'll take the buyout, and we don't want to drive these things around. We don't want to have to sell electric vehicles and fix them. And if you really use your head, what are GM vehicles known for? Electrical problems. And you make an all-electric vehicle, I'm sure that these guys are worried, we're going to get those things up. Our bays are going to be full of these electric cars doing warranty work where we don't make any profit. And if you know anything about vehicle repair, a lot of these dealers, most of their profit comes from repair. And if it's warranty work, they hardly make anything doing warranty work. So they want to do work where they're actually working on the car. So to them, why should they put all this money into it and then have to do warranty work for nothing and not make enough profit? So, there's another mistake. Cadillac electric cars, and then even opting to tell them they have to, not saying, well, we'll pay for the training and the tools. They wouldn't even do that. So, yet another mistake on the long line of mistakes that General Motors has been making lately. Well, the Germans are at it again. A former Porsche 919 engineer is now helping Volkswagen build an electric vehicle that will beat Tesla. His name is Alexander Hitzinger, and he developed the hybrid Porsche 919 race car that dominated Le Mans 2015, 16, and 17. They say they want to take on Tesla and make the fastest electric car. Now, I understand this high-level snobbery of our car's bigger than your car, but Volkswagen, you know what I say? Why don't you work on a regular car that everybody wants to drive? You don't need a world beater. Let's see. Let's scratch our heads. How did Volkswagen make its fortune in the first place? The lowly Beetle with a little 4-cylinder engine didn't even put out 50 horsepower. That's how they made their fame and fortune. Maybe just go back to the drawing board, Volkswagen, and make a reliable electric car. You don't need the fastest one in the world. What does Toyota make their money on? Toyota Corollas or Toyota Camrys that are luxurious and people like driving them around. I know Volkswagen's going to be making their SUVs down the road here in Tennessee. Chattanooga, I believe they're going to be making them there. That makes more sense. Don't put all this, oh, we're going to make the fastest in the world. Yeah, they can play around with it all they want, but if I were them, I'd put my big focus into make a nice, dependable car. And if you can, make a really low-priced one, like the Volkswagen Beetle. Then people are going to say, hey, this electric car didn't cost much. It didn't break down. Look what fun it was. And a lot of people, they're going to try it out first. They're going to keep their Camry. They're going to keep their Fords. They're going to keep their Chevys for their cross-country trips. But they might say, let's buy that Volkswagen for the city car. See how it works out. So sell the lower-priced ones first. Don't start building these world killers, because that's not where the money's going to be. Hey, put on your thinking caps, Volkswagen. Zebra says, what could cause the spark plug in my Honda getting wet? Only on number 4. I don't think it's oil because it's clear. And the other are fine, except 4, and it's misfiring a little. What you want to do is figure out what it is. Unfortunately, they say it doesn't seem like oil. If it is coolant, your head gasket's starting to go, and it's a 2000, so it's a 21-year-old vehicle. It could easily be the head gasket starting to go. But how you could easily tell if that's where it's coming from is get some UV leak dye for radiator coolant system. Again, the auto parts store buys it. Pour it in the radiator, and then drive it around. And then when you take it out, if it's wet, the good kits come with yellow sunglasses and a UV light. You look at it, and these kits like at AutoZone cost $25. Look at it, and if you see it's glowing, that means that the coolant's on there, and that's coolant, and yes, your head gasket's starting to blow. But if it runs okay, you could try a little bars, head gasket sealer. They sell at AutoZone in different places. If it's just starting and it runs okay, they can often seal it. If it's just water that's leaking, because it's good at sealing the water. If it's oil that's leaking in the head gasket, nothing fixes that. But if it's just the coolant and water, the sealer can work quite well. I've been using it for years. It's like $20 for a bottle. It doesn't cost that much, and it works with all coolant. So you might give it a try if you find out, yes, that is coolant that's on the spark plug, and I'll bet that's what it is. U.S. Man Baby 55 said, what is more reliable, Hemi 6.4 or Ford's Mustang Coyote V8, and which would you choose? Oh, I'd pick the Mustang by far, because the Hemis that they're making, they actually have designed a bunch of them wrong. They used to have a little bit less power, and the camshaft in the middle of the engine was closer to the crank, so it got lubricated by oil splashing off the crank at low RPMs and idling. Then they decided to get more power. They moved the cam apart, and then at low speeds and idling, the oil doesn't get to the cam, and they wear out, which costs over $5,000 to replace them. They wear out. It's an old-fashioned design. Realize those Hemis are still push-rod engines, where the Coyote V8 is an overhead cam engine. It's a much more modern design, and it generally will last a lot longer if you take care of it. Plus, when you talk Fiat Chrysler versus Ford, the resale value of Fiat Chrysler plummets like a stone, and Mustangs hold their values much better too, mainly because they don't fall apart as fast as the Dodges do, and they don't have the problems. Now, the Dodge has more power. There's no arguing that, but for a much shorter period of time before it breaks. Boy, 123 says, when my car turns left, the left rear wheel produces some kind of noise. It doesn't come when you're moving or turning right, but turn to left, I can hear the noise. What could be the problem? Well, there's only two things that can really do that. The first obvious thing is just take that wheel off and look at the brake pads. If the brake pads are starting to get really thin and you turn hard, then the metal part will hit the rotor and you'll hear some noise. Simple. Put new brake pads on. Now, if the brake pads are thick and it's not that, then odds are it's a wheel bearing starting to go out, because when you turn to that side, you put more weight on the wheel bearing and it's going to make more noise. But since you say it only makes it 20% of the time, it's going to be hard to figure out if it is the wheel bearing, because when you jack it up and pull on it, it won't have any play yet. It's not until they're really worn that when you grab them, they'll wobble because the wheel bearing's worn out. So basically, if you see that the brake pads are still thick and there's nothing grabbing there, it's probably the wheel bearing, and I'd just go replace it myself, do some preventive maintenance and not have it break on the road somewhere and strand you. The modern ones, generally, you just get a hub assembly, it just bolts off and bolts on. There's no pressing involved because the wheel bearings are built into the hub. You go to a place like AutoZone, get the whole assembly for maybe $120, bolted off, bolted on. Easy job on most modern cars. Gozo says, I'm thinking about getting an 80s or 90s car as a daily driver. Which would you think would be most reliable? 80 to 86 Volvo 240, 84, 90 BMW E30s, 1998 European Ford Escort, or the 1992 to 93 Honda Civic. All right, if you want to talk about pure reliability, the 92 to 93 Honda, they are excellent vehicles. If they're taken care of, they can last for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles. They're Hondas. You can easily get parts for them. People know how to work on them. Now, the 80 to 86 Volvo 240s were pretty much indestructible cars. But you're talking about another 10 years of age. And when you're talking about, say, a 92 Honda Civic, it's bad enough that that thing is what? It's 29 years old. Are you going to go to 31 years old on a 1980? You know, that's kind of crazy. That's a little bit crazy. Getting them that old, you're using it as a daily driver, you know, you got to comprehend. And plus, what mileage you're going to drive. If you're going to drive 15, 20,000 miles a year, you're crazy to buy any of those because they're so old. You're going to have to do some kind of repairs that could get expensive, and you might be waiting on parts a few days. That I wouldn't do. But if you're going to do lower mileage, the Honda Civic, you really couldn't beat that if you can get one that's in decent shape, because they can go 300, 400, 500,000 miles. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.